Welcome to RecLess, a podcast making people smarter and more knowledgeable about parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing their own unique and sometimes entertaining perspectives with a surprise guest each episode. This is RecLess.
All right, everybody, welcome to RecLess. This is episode 19. My name is Shane Mize. I'm here with my good buddies, Tom and Jay. Tom, Jay, how are y'all doing today?
Doing good today. I've got something that I want to share before you get into the question.
Okay.
I think I texted you about this, you and Hannah. I've got a special surprise for you, Shane.
Okay.
Now, Jay, don't feel left out. There was a really cool, weird happenstance situation a couple weeks ago, and something has materialized out of it. So what I want to do, and just preface here on the episode, is I'm going to be mailing something your way, and I want you to open it live on one of our next two episodes.
Okay, fair enough. We can do that.
I think it's very hard for someone to say, don't feel left out. You're going to get a gift in the mail, but the other guy is not going to get something. So,
your gift may be watching me open this heaping pile of cow shit that's on fire or something. You don't know what it is.
Now, yes, I was going to say, if it's some sort of box that explodes and covers you in paint or covers you in like glitter, then you know what? That's a gift for me too, because I'm just going to laugh my tail off the whole day. So
that's right.
And we record these videos so I can just like put it on a loop and just laugh whenever I'm having a rough day.
At any time, for sure. We can make it a gift.
Yes. But I'm good.
Well,
can't complain.
Okay, cool. By now everyone knows this is episode 19. We're almost to that 20 threshold, they say, where either podcasts quit or don't. So I guess we have one more to decide if we still want to do this shit or not. But at episode 19, I think by now everyone knows that we ask a question first and then we bring on the guest. And so the question I have for y'all is the holiday season, whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, any of those holidays, this holiday season, towards the end of the year, always has events. And I'm not talking about family events, right? I'm not talking about like when we talked about the Thanksgiving and y'all played the Turkey Bowl. I'm talking about your city, your school, a church. Someone normally puts on some sort of ceremony, an event. And of those, what's your favorite one? Whether something you've been a part of now or growing up as a kid, you never missed the whatever it was, cookies with Santa or whatever.
I got two. One's really, as my nickname goes, two.
Yes.
Two answers, two questions, however you want to go with this. But one's a quick one, not an event. It was actually Katie Keller had inspired me. And Jay, you might have been working there with Katie at the time, but not necessarily an event. It was during COVID. And I saw that she was doing something with virtual visits with Santa. And it was honestly one of the most memorable experiences I'll ever have doing what we do. Small community, small department. So I had access to a Santa suit. Never really done that before.
You were Santa?
I was Santa. So I was on these Zooms, and the faces, it was basically a 5-minute appointment, 5-minute Zoom with kids and their parents.
They lit up, didn't they?
Oh my gosh, they lit up. Did it in our little foyer area that had a beautiful tree and a nice little backdrop. So, quote unquote, the North Pole. Really one of the best experiences that I've had with the holidays. And then just now we're doing something that's new as of a couple of years ago, where we closed down Main Street. Our village is called Hilton. And so we've toyed around with the name Hallmark, holiday Hallmark in Hilton, but I think there's some trademark issues there. So it's just the holiday celebration on Main Street, but it's really nice. We close down the village closes down Main Street for several events, but never for the holidays. And last year we did it, and it brought so many people together, and it was just wonderful to have the community together, in the middle of the street, close the businesses, all of the, all the other types of activities that we included. We had one of the local dance studios do this huge number in the middle of Main Street, right? So all of the participants gathered around and were watching it, incorporating all of the typical partners, but just it's a little more unique than what we've typically done at our community center. So it's been a welcome event. It's growing every year.
That's really cool. What do you got, Jay?
Well, from an event perspective, all of our rec centers do a lot of different style events like this time of year. And the one that stands out the most that came to mind, like as soon as you asked this question, was one that we do every year in one of our more underserved neighborhoods that is very connected with a lot of different community organizations. And last year, like one of the community groups actually donated $10,000 to this facility for this specific event. What makes this event a little more unique than other holiday events that we do is we get all of our participants from other programs involved. So like we do a senior lunch program every day where we actually feed lunch to seniors for free. And the seniors are actually wrapping gifts throughout the whole month of December. So like they have this ownership of this event as well, just like the kids that come on the night of our event. So it's called Winter Wonderland. We pretty much turn the rec center into this huge like Winter Wonderland festive event where there's a DJ there, there's a catered meal there, there's a room that we designate for arts and crafts. Outside last year, we had a hot cocoa truck, we had a bounce house, but then like it all ends with like this rush into this room with all these toys and gifts and wrapped presents that in some cases, these are the only gifts these families or kids might get the whole holiday season. So to see their faces and to see them go in those rooms and pick up these gifts, it's pretty special knowing that like we're doing that from a work perspective that otherwise some of these families wouldn't be so fortunate to get a hot meal or clothes on their back, because we get some donations too with like winter jackets and gloves and all that. So that one's pretty special, and there's a lot of community engagement and involvement that comes with all the community partners that are involved. So that is coming up December 14th. So looking forward to that one.
That's cool.
That's good stuff.
The irony of me being a park and rec professional and not being a huge fan of the pomp and circumstance of lights or fireworks at 4th of July, that's just never been something I was even really all that interested in as much, even as a kid. But when I was in Fort Worth as a park and rec professional there before we moved to Missouri City, Grand Prairie had just started Prairie Lights, and it was they had taken an area of their park system that abutted to the Cedar Hill State Park section, the state park. So they had a section that got really close to the state park, and they did the same thing. They had some camping and some on-site stuff. And so in December, it wasn't as used as much as it was in the summer and other times of the year. And they had a great idea to have one of those, just light trails where you just you see across the country. It wasn't a unique idea to them, but man, they did such a good job. Grand Prairie is a really innovative group, and they did such a good job. And they've done it every year since. But I was able, as a park and rec professional, to take my family to year one, and we went the first couple of years we were there. At the time, I was just going to just kind of show support to another agency in the area, but I was so impressed by it, and my kids just enjoyed it. And midway through, you stop and there's a Santa, and they all got to sit on Santa's lap, and that was a much better experience than any type of mall Santa experience that we all as parents sometimes have to navigate or deal with as well. And so it was their way to see Santa. It was a way to see lights. And I just thought it was really well done. My last couple of years in Fort Worth, we went every year, at least once, sometimes a couple of times, whether we would take a senior group and then I'd still go with my family and then our church group or whatever. So it was a really cool thing that even now that I'm not in the DFW area, I still see it going on. And I still think of the times that I enjoyed it. And I see that they've added hundreds of millions of lights every year since, so I can't even imagine what it's like now. But those types of drive-through park things where you can appreciate it at your own pace, I've always enjoyed a little bit more. It'd have to be that, and I'd said previously that one of the cool things about what we do is that we get to be behind the scenes on some cool stuff. My kids got to ride with Santa one year in the float, and they still talk about that. And we still have photos of just how their face was lit up when they were riding with them. And that's a cool thing that I think will always stick with me as well. I mean, it's that time of the year, and I think it's a time that we all really enjoy being in this industry to put on these events to serve the community. And I think it's one of those times that, parks and rec at times can be marginalized and maligned by community leaders potentially or people in the community itself. But, when we put on these types of events, you really see the impact that we have. So it's cool to be a part of it. All right, let's jump to the guest. Y'all ready?
Let's do it. Question mark.
So yeah, question mark. So the guest knows a lot about Parks and Rec. First of all, y'all both know the guest. The guest is someone that knows a lot about Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec has been a part of their family. They have a legacy. We've had a couple legacies on now, and it'd be great for it. I don't know if NRPA has that set. I wonder how much of our industry has a parent or grandparent that got them involved. I would love to know that. I would think it's a small number, but we've seemed to have, for 19 guests now, we've seemed to have at least a couple now that were legacy. So I think that's
we've had a
cool.
few.
Yeah. So their legacy through their great grandfather, who was the director of Springfield Playground and Rec Commission, John McWhorter. That ring a bell? No? Okay. They're director of a small department in the Midwest. Makes some sense. Their parent or their great grandfather was in Springfield, so they've been Midwesterners for a long time. They won the Dorothy Everton Smythe Woman of the Year Award. Still no guesses?
I got nothing so far.
You got me. So
they play saxophone.
oh wow, I
There
did
it is.
too.
That
Fun
gives
fact.
it away.
Third grade.
They're an avid hunter. They even have a lodge, a hunting lodge that we've actually seen them in photos and videos. No guesses still. They teach you sports and volunteer with scouts. And their favorite holiday is Halloween. They dress up as a pirate every year. Is there any guesses?
We should know that they dressed up as a pirate.
Yeah. It's well publicized.
Yeah.
Is it funny that I think of Katie Keller because I have that picture
That's funny.
and I know it's not Katie, but
Well, the person I described is actually Ron Swanson and the TV character. And this person is as close as we know to Ron Swanson. Welcome, our good friend. And if I'd have told you anything else, you'd have known who it was. John Stutzman.
John.
hey,
Hey guys.
John, how's it going?
Not bad. How are you?
Good. Was any of that true?
Yes, my great grandfather was in
So
Springfield.
You
you
were my
shared a
guest.
picture of an old park map like a year or two ago, maybe more than that now, who knows? But
And he's
it
a
was
hunter.
actually-
Yep.
And he's a
Yeah,
director of a small Midwest town.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he has got a hunting lodge.
So John
And
was
he's
my
probably
guest
helped
until
with
you
youth sports at one time.
went saxophone and Dorothy, the Dorothy Award, right? That's what threw me off.
Yeah.
When I,
Tom,
John,
I was
welcome.
watching your face when you heard the name McWhorter, and there's something in you like you're like, I've heard that name before. So
Well, I can honestly say to this day, and people don't believe me when I say this, I've still yet to watch an episode of Parks and Rec. So
I knew that would trip you up for sure.
yeah, I have no idea. I mean, but what's up, buddy?
so John, is
Not
this
too
your
bad.
is this the new office?
this is my new office. Yep. Enjoying the new digs. It's actually today would be the month anniversary of starting down here. So getting settled in, and certainly appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited to be here. Good to see you guys
It's
too.
awesome.
Too long.
John was in on the intro. He even dressed a little bit like Ron Swanson today, which we appreciate. I tried to get him to shave his beard, but
John's
he's
you definitely.
If he really wanted to be on the intro, he should have dressed up as a pirate.
That's right.
But that's what
That's
Ron
right.
Swanson does.
That's right. That's what Ron
John is
Swanson does.
actually dressed like Ron Swanson at least once, correct?
for Halloween, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I
Twice
have
for
one
Halloween
face.
I've done it, so.
I got one question before we get into the actual line of questionings. So, John, this is maybe the second or third time in the history of the show, which is obviously not that much. We've talked about 19 episodes. John was one of the guests that I've asked that pushed me off.
Nice.
Yes, he did a really nice job. So my question is, when I asked you, were you already asked by Shane?
Yes, I was.
All right. Well, that makes me feel a lot better. So
I've gotten to him and Biedenstein before you got to him. Biedenstein set a date like way out, and then I think John was just screwing around with you.
Well, Tom, in my defense, I had a really easy out with the new job. So
you
that
did.
was really easy to not
You
even
did.
drop any hints and be like, yep, I just, Tom, I got to get settled first. So Shane has been trying, I think, for probably about 2 months now, I think, to get me on. And with the new job and my hunting trips, frankly, I wasn't able to make it till now. So.
And the new job's a great place to start. So,
Yeah.
John, you have done something that I think a lot of our listeners at one time or another will want to do, which is step into a director role. This is your first opportunity to step in. First of all, it's been your first time to step in any new role. I think you said in 7 or 8 years, but stepping into a director role for the first time. So you've been there for about a month. How are you feeling? What's it like? It's a new experience. That imposter syndrome, I think it sometimes is pretty real, right?
Yep. And there's a lot to unpack in that question. But before I dive into that question, just want to get one thing out of the way. Bills, Monster, and Disney. There, we're done.
Knocked it out.
We've got that taken care of. So that's been mentioned. But as far as the new role goes, the biggest thing I'll start with is, as you said, Shane, it's really been 7.5, 8 years since I've started a new job. And it's easy to forget how hard starting something new is, even when it's something you've done before. I've had to reflect an awful lot on, wait a minute, no, there were challenges in other roles, even when it was something, similar role in a new community or a new organization. There still were a lot of challenges there. And I think it's easy to forget that, and you can just look at, oh, no, it was so easy at the end, and it was so good, and it was great, and all these pieces of the puzzle. So just getting used to not knowing, and frankly being okay with saying I don't know, and all of that piece, and using that, and frankly adjusting it. I feel like our group of NRPA folks, our family, is one that we're very used to being, I use it a little tongue-in-cheek, leaders in the industry. And so to be in a situation where the answer is I don't know constantly, not necessarily on an occasional basis, but constantly, is a hard thing to get adjusted to. That's been one thing to unpack, leaving the Twin Cities metropolitan area in Minnesota to come to a smaller town about an hour out of the Twin Cities, and just adjusting that lifestyle. And frankly, commuting has certainly added some challenges to it, and just more to adapt. So then finding that personal routine or whatever it may be is certainly something that takes time to adjust to. None of it's bad. It just takes time. When you've done things for so long, it takes some time to unpack and get settled in and find your new routines and adjust to the new schedule, and all of those pieces of that. But then looking at the director piece, as one of your previous guests, Chris Nunes, mentioned to me when I first started this position, he reminded me of something I've said for about 16, 17 years now, my entire career in Park and Rec, is that I never aspired to be a director. That wasn't the end goal for me. And he reminded me of that, and my response was, gee, I really screwed that up. And something I never wanted to do, and I'm now in a chair, and I'm now doing this, and taking on the new challenges, and that's exactly why I wanted to do it, was for the growth opportunities. But I will say, in that first month, there's been a lot of challenges just trying to get my head around things, coming into an organization that was without a director for 4 months, and everyone wants to talk to you, and everyone wants to get to know you. Being in a smaller community, everyone wants to, oh, you're the new guy. Can I just have 5 minutes of your time? I'd really like to meet you. And then just trying to learn what you don't know is a big challenge. And frankly, it's a little overwhelming. And I know this show and you guys and I talk a lot about working genius. Unlike Mr. Biedenstein, I am not an enabler. In fact, that's one of my frustrations. And having to be in that E mode for this first month a ton has been exhausting, frankly. And so I have leaned to get through this transition. And I've just now felt over the last week or two where I'm going, oh, okay, I recognize that. I know what you're talking about there a little bit. I'm leaving feeling like I got some things done instead of learning all day or being in meetings all day. And it's thanks to to our family, as we call them, through NRPA. I've called many of you and talked to many of you and bounced ideas off of many of you, and all the little nuggets and encouragement and support and the natural feelings that, hey, John, this is normal. Like, don't worry about it. If you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, that's part of the transition to this role. And I certainly think using a network in a transition to a new job, especially a promotional role, is something that is absolutely huge. And I'm incredibly grateful to all of you that I've been able to pick your brain, and even just the support texts of, hey, I hope it's going well, how's it going, et cetera. So I think that's a huge part of success into a transition.
I think it's a strong statement of why you should develop a network of people. Like, I think one of our close friends, Kara, emailed you like day one. It might have been the first email you got when you were in the new office.
I got snail mail from Kara. It was waiting for me.
That doesn't shock me at all. But I did want to ask, everyone here has been a director or is a director. So I kind of wanted to talk to Tom and Jay for a second too. Like, there was a moment where you walk into an agency and all of a sudden you're the person that's supposed to know everything. Even though you're allowed to say, I don't know that, the buck stops with the fact that you still have to figure it out. You can't say, I don't know that. And that's, as a rec superintendent or assistant director, that's back on the director to find out that answer. And so, Tom and Jay, what was that like for you? Because I know that I've had to work really hard, and I've worked harder as a director than I have in any of my other positions, because at some point I'm ultimately the head of what is responsible for the agency, the department itself.
Yeah, John, before I answer, how long have you been there?
A month.
A month. Okay, so John and I got an opportunity to talk a few times, and one of those was recently, maybe a couple weeks ago. So a couple weeks into your tenure, and I can resonate really, really well with what you're experiencing. When I came into my position, the former director, who is an amazing, amazing individual, was there for 30 years. However, not there for the months preceding. So the individual, I think you get into some of those situations where you could step into a role where, like Katie Keller, it's fresh, right? There was no, in her instance, there was really no even department, right? So starting from scratch. Some people jump into a role where there's maybe, hey, I'm retiring, let's replace because I'm around, let's replace while I'm here. And you have the opportunity to work with someone hand in hand for 2-3 weeks to a couple months, right? Or you're coming into an agency like that like mine or like yours, John, that might have been well established, just hasn't had the leadership in the last how many ever months prior to your arrival. So for that, it was a challenge. And that was a question I wanted to ask you, John, too, which I'll get to in a moment, but because I want to let Jay kind of speak to it as well. You go through the interview process, you're going through it with elected officials, maybe another department head. They don't really know what the director of Parks and Recreation is doing on a day-to-day. They're hiring someone that they think is the best fit. And I actually had an email with someone today. It was Stephen Bentley from Raleigh, who's just completed his first year as the director there. Bigger operation, of course, but we were corresponding. And we were talking a little bit about, it kind of went back to what Tom O'Rourke had spoke about with us, what was it, a week ago, about you may not know everything, but I wasn't hired to be the expert on everything. I was hired to hire the people who are going to be the experts, to inspire those people, and to manage what's going on within the department. So coming to that realization was key, pivotal to me in really overcoming imposter syndrome and finding that comfort zone. And I'll end this thought with what we've talked about. I think we've talked about it before, but eventually you build up a little bit of equity where you do have to be humble, in the sense that at a board meeting, someone's going to ask you a question that you don't know the answer to. And you're going to be able to just have to hopefully get their support and say, I'm going to need to go back to so-and-so, my branch manager for this, and I'll get you what you need. I'll get you that information as soon as possible. And luckily for me, I feel like I'm very comfortable in doing that right now, because I certainly don't want to sit there spinning my wheels and give an answer that I'm not prepared for. So it's been a mixture of really accepting the fact that I'm not the end all be all, someone who knows everything, but my role really is to guide and to help make those decisions based on the suggestions and the people that I lean on.
And Jay started a department.
Well, I was going to add a totally different dynamic, because in John's case and in Tom's case, you guys talked about, you started as a director and there was a gap of 3-4 months or however long of a time where there wasn't a director. So obviously, like, everyone's coming to you and, hey, like, we got to finish this. We got to add this. I want your time with you. In my situation, I was hired to start a department from scratch, similar to what you mentioned with Katie Keller. And I don't think I've ever told this story in one of our podcasts, but there was a situation that happened where, when I was sitting as the director of Indian Trail, we're building new parks. We didn't have existing properties. We didn't have programs because we were a brand new department. And there was an issue with one of our parks that we were developing. And at the time, like, my background was always in programming, special events, athletics. Like, I didn't develop parks. I didn't have capital planning experience or design experience. And there was an issue with one of our parks, and I'm in a boardroom with 10 people, including like construction managers. And they're like, well, what do you want to do about this? And they're all looking at me. And I'm like, well, let's have a conversation about options. But it was one of those situations where, like, they expect you to know. Meanwhile, like, I'm a new director that have never developed tennis courts. That's what it was. It was about tennis courts. Never played tennis in my life, nor have I developed and designed courses or courts. So, you got to rely on the folks that are also with you, whether it's your team or whether it's like colleagues that you're working with, because you're not always going to have the answer to everything. But in some cases, they're always going to lean to you for that. So, in some cases, you're going to have staff that work directly under you that, like, you're going to rely on, but other cases, it might be other departments that you're working with. So that was definitely a learning curve. Then obviously, like, we grew our team and we had a maintenance team and we had facility staff. So eventually we had a larger team that I could rely on that had a lot more experience or knowledge in certain topics. But you never know what's going to be thrown at you in a director role when you're in a meeting for the first time on a project that you've never done before.
That's true. I remember in Hutto, I replaced someone I knew. I thought, it's a small department. It was a smaller agency. I wasn't there 2 weeks, and the city manager pointed straight at me and said, "What's the cost to build a rec center square foot right now?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's what I'm supposed to know as a director?" So it's one of those things that what it did was I knew it next time. I was constantly every quarter or every 6 months looking at any new builds in our area. If there was a sports complex being built, and if it was 18 fields, and I would look at what that cost per square foot was, and I'd look at what the over cost, and I'd put it in notes. And if I ever got asked, I could say, well, listen, Temple's building something, $16 million for 12 fields, and it's 30 acres wide or whatever. And at least I'd have some, I think in some ways, whether you've got to be able to say, I don't have that, I'm going to look for it, they still expect you to be the one to find that answer. They're not going to, your planning person, your CIP person, your library person isn't obviously going to be the person that would know that info. So yeah, you definitely, in the director role, you get some questions asked. You're like, crap, I didn't realize that was something I'd ever have to know.
Jay, you said something really interesting there about transitioning from programming to the director. And I think that's something that I'm super excited about, but old habits die hard as well. After being a programmer for 16 years in various programs, a couple different organizations, it's second nature. It's like, oh, I want to do this. I know how to do this. I love that part. And well, that's good. I think what ultimately got me to look at it as I want to take on a new challenge. I want to do something I said I was never going to do and be a director. Is I needed that new challenge. I craved that new challenge. I could create programs. I could create events. I knew I could do that, but wanting that challenge. But I will say part of the challenge that I'm facing now is how to not step on toes and not go to the programmers going, why are you doing it this way? Or how are you doing it that way? Or have you done it this way? Or I want you to do this, and do exactly what was said by what Tom, you talked about Tom O'Rourke saying is hiring the people to do that, trusting the people to do that, make them the experts and say, nope, you go do this. And Shane, you and I have talked about this at some point of just your leadership style of letting people run, giving them all the tools to do it and make it happen. But if you warn them and it doesn't work, then you warn them and they do it anyways, to let them go. And I think just trusting and empowering your staff, that's a word I'm using a lot here in my first month, is trying to empower the staff to say, go do it. I'm going to get out of your way. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to support you, but I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't do, but I'm here to support you in what you're doing. But again, old habits die hard of letting go of what I've done for 16 years, frankly.
Sure. Yeah, accountability is big. I'm here to make sure you have the budget and the support you need to do what you're requesting. But if that fails, we're going to have a discussion about why and what happened and what are next steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because we can make new mistakes. I don't want to keep making old mistakes, though.
John, you talked about really letting people, empowering them, letting them lead, right? And what I love about our show is that I've taken so many of those one-liners or those tidbits that I can use on a regular basis. And I'm working with our friend Anthony Iraqi right now and workshopping something that's a session that's surrounded around exactly what we're talking about today. And that's, so you're a director. Now what? I go back to Chris Bass, and Chris Bass talked about active listening. And then I go back to what Stephen Bentley just talked about in an email. And what he did for the first year was every other week, he dedicated 3 hours a week to meet with different branch employees to find out what they're doing, to listen, to observe, to watch, which is pretty impressive to take that time. We all know that, and John, you're experiencing this. Death by meetings is happening for you right now. It's meeting with every public or private partner that you have, in addition to every department head, anybody that you could possibly meet with. You're probably
citizen
meeting
boards.
With at this point. Yes, boards. That was a great piece of advice that I got from Stephen, even now, right? And I've been in this position for a while now. So out of the time that you've spent with those individuals that are on your team right now, what are some of the conversations or topics that you've heard and you've learned that you didn't know about during the interview process that you're really excited about?
I think it's the biggest thing for me that I'm excited about, because one of the things I like to do is I like finding successes and building off of them, but I also like finding areas that can improve to be more efficient. I think in a lot of the organizations I've been with, there's been a lot of incredibly established, amazing opportunities, services provided to the community. But I've also been tasked with, okay, how do we take these to the next steps? To steal Niele's company name, frankly, find the next practices, not just the best practices. And I think looking here in St. Peter, while I've got a ton of respect for this community, for the staff, for even the previous director, who I know through Park and Rec since we're a small world, looking at things and kind of looking at what's next and taking that lens and saying, and asking the question of why are we doing it that way? Why is this procedure this way? And finding ways that the answer is, I don't know, it's just the way we've always done it, and taking on the challenge of, okay, if that's the way we've always done it, is there a better way to do it? And it doesn't necessarily have to go through me, but encouraging that challenge, building that challenge within the team as a whole to push forward and find new ways to do things and new ways to serve our community and new ways to serve those that we're serving in, frankly, new and innovative ways. And that's something I believe I've had success with in other positions, but something that always excites me. But this director level, now I have to do it in a new way. Instead of taking it and running and, yep, I'm going to do this, I got it. It's now I need to hand it off and say, okay, here's the thought. Now I'd like to see you go do this. I'd like to see the team go do this, and not simply be the bus driver, but more the one who plants the seed, and say, hey, let's make this happen. And I'll give you the resources and the tools and the support, and I'll help pick it up if it doesn't go right, and help pick staff up. So I think that's one of the challenges that I'm really, really excited about, is just to look at how things are done and why things are done, and evaluate and encourage new ways of thinking in the areas that are. Obviously, I don't want to come in and change things that are outstanding and the community loves, but find those things that can be evolved.
Yeah, it's almost looking at everything like an opportunity.
Yes,
that's a great
way to say it.
It's a great mindset to look into it. There's opportunities in the operations that are currently running, and there's opportunities in maybe some of the either operations, services, or programs that you don't have.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool way to look at it, Tom. I like that. I think some of the advice I've been given as I've transitioned to is, I'm new, I'm supposed to ask why. That's part of my process, and that's part of what my right is as the newbie, is ask these questions why. And instead of just feeling like it's always why, I think what you just said is exactly right. Everything's an opportunity. So it's not that I'm criticizing or evaluating in a negative way. It's simply, hey, is there an opportunity here to grow? Is there an opportunity to evolve? Is there an opportunity to better serve? So I really like the way you said that. And I'm going to steal that.
Well, I think that's such a big benefit for you to be able to come in and like ask why without judgment, because you are just learning as the outsider that didn't come from that department. And you'll be able to implement your own take on so many things that maybe it was done the right way, but there's also a better way or a unique way or a new twist you can add to it.
Yeah. That's something I think that is one of the challenges that it really does excite me, is about this position. And again, going back to, I never thought I wanted to do this. I think these challenges, these opportunities, these new perspectives, frankly, that's been the best part of the first month, is just sitting at a table and going, whoa, I never realized I was going to have to do that, or wow, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. Like, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Jay, you bring up an interesting point too. Like, not only asking why you're doing things, but it ultimately has to be John's team at some point. Like, he can't continue to carry water for the previous director, right? Like, at some point, things are going to change. And I guess Jay probably didn't experience that because there were probably no, sacred cows or whatever you would call them when you're starting a new department. But maybe both for John and Tom, y'all are replacing people that had a lot of respect in their agency and that y'all have a lot of respect for.
Very much. But
you have to be true to yourself as a leader. And there are things that you're going to want to do differently than they did, even though those things were even potentially successful. Do you have any trepidation, John, or did you, Tom, in the past have any trepidation making changes off the way things had been done?
I can jump in on this, and I actually I might still be pulling my foot out of my mouth from this, because I actually just did something like that yesterday, Shane. Is I actually had lunch with the old director, who's in a town about 25 minutes up the road. He moved back to his hometown to be the director down there, and now that I'm slowly settling in, wanted to have lunch and catch up with him, and also congratulate him on a state award that he was just named the recipient of for 2023. And we're talking through one of the projects that's underway and that I'm getting trial by fire working with our public works director, because Parks is under public works, is about a $2 million park renovation to one of our major parks, the one right outside of our community center. And there's a lot in motion right now. There's the concept that's already been put together. The funding is being secured and worked at an administrative level, but there's still a lot of conversation about what the final product is going to look like. And I was talking with him, trying to better understand where it was going to go. And he started talking about something, and I went, oh yeah, that's something, I really struggle with understanding why that is. I may not have been quite as subtle with my communication as I just portrayed it. But all of a sudden he's like, oh, you don't agree with that? And I went, well, no. I said, and here's why. And I listed off about 3 reasons. He's like, oh yeah, I get what you're saying there. But at the same time, he's like, here's what we were thinking. And clearly he was in support of this idea before he left. And here I am, just to his face, going very bluntly, yeah, no, I don't agree with that. And so after talking with him, I think going back to the transition that you're talking about is, I think as a director, our role, or my understanding in the month I've been one, is to evaluate all those perspectives. Yes, I have to make it my own. Yes, I have to be authentic in who I am, but to understand, oh, okay, well, that's why it is this way, and that's why you're looking at it that way, and then compare and contrast with the ways that I want to do things, or I have to do things, or I'm bringing a new perspective to. And I've been looking back at that lunch for the last day, going, ooh, maybe I should have handled that a little bit differently. But it's also got my brain going all over the place now, going, well, okay, I get the merit of this. I may not agree with it, but at least I'm understanding the merit and I know where we are in the process. And so I think that's one I've dealt with right away, and I'm still trying to adjust how best to go through that process.
Well, before Tom starts, I think the buck stops with you at some point, right? Like, you can't, 2 years from now, that park is completed and someone says, well, why'd you do it that way? And you say, well, because the dude in front of me wanted to do it that way. That, unless you inherit a park that's almost completed, in your first month or whatever, you don't really have that ability to reason with that very long. It's, you're now the person where the buck stops with you. And if you think it's different than the previous director, you're entitled to be able to present that to city leadership and get approval and move forward in that direction, I would think. Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to find your footing and find your way of presenting what it is that you're looking to do, whether it's through research or, sometimes gut instinct, especially in the beginning of a term, right? Like, I know it's easier said than done to say, okay, well, there's a book on everything, right? I could find a book on everything. That's not the case. And sometimes, depending on what your circumstances you came into, and for me, it was the gentleman that was the director before me. His name was Steve Fowler. Awesome, awesome guy. His interesting story was his wife. So talk about legacy. His wife was my boss in my first organization. So a husband and wife director, really, really great family. Their kids went through the programs. Their kids then ended up working in summer camps and all that. Now they actually, my old boss, Linda Fowler, and her son, Andy, they run our Friends Foundation. So really cool, full circle. She's retired now, and, Steve has passed, rest his soul. And going into the position was very unique. And I do remember one example that I was in a situation like you just said, John, and it was kind of a combination of listening to people. I went in and surveyed some of the staff, specifically on the side of the parks operations, which I hadn't had as much experience in. I'd listen, and they said, this isn't working for us. So ultimately, I did my due diligence, looked into it, did some other surveys, interviews within the department, made a very tough decision very, very early on, and that was to let someone go based on some research and some findings of what we really needed and what was not needed. Again, using as much of research or evidence and data that I could. I was called into the town supervisor's office maybe a day or two later, and that was an unpopular decision. It was something that I looked back at and I said, John, for weeks, I was like, is this the beginning of the end already? Did I already fail before I walked through the door? And ultimately they supported it. It worked out, and it was one of those situations where I learned a lot from it. And listening to the people that were already in place was a big part of what helped me get through that situation and make a decision that was ultimately better for the department. But I could tell you that I still have someone, one of the village elected officials, the mayor, talked to me recently and said, yeah, when you got hired, we weren't sure about you. And realistically, it was because the individual was there for 30 years before that. So it wasn't anything against me, but a 30-year-old versus someone who just left who was there for 30 years. That's a change. There's a large dynamic there, regardless of the type of people that we are.
So the cool thing that I got in talking with the old director, Joey Schugel, who's now with New Ulm Park and Rec here in Minnesota, is he reminded me, and I think this is some of where the transition / understanding the new role helps immensely, is he reminded me that, again, like both Jay and Tom, you've said, is like programming coming into these capital projects was not our forte prior to sitting in this role. I'm in the same boat. And Joey just reminded me, hey, just because the concept is done doesn't mean it's not going to change 25 times over the next year and a half it's going to take to finish this project. And so I don't necessarily have to go the route that you just described, Tom, of making a decision, this instant. I can kind of let the process play out, trust my instincts, follow what I want to do. Because ultimately, yes, I will be the person in 2, 3, 4, 5 years super overseeing this park, but let the process play itself out. Make sure I'm listening to the community. Make sure I'm listening to staff and working through that. And as he reminded me of that, going, oh, okay, well, yeah, we can see how this plays out. It's a concept. It's not a done deal. And understanding that process and being reminded, even though in my head it's like, oh yeah, duh, but being reminded of that process to say, yeah, there is going to be time, without being the guy coming in with the iron fist and say, no, I don't agree with this, or changing it or whatever. Letting a process allow change versus obviously personnel decisions like yours, Tom, are a little different, but this project has time. I mean, this is going to be a 1.5 to 2 year project. So there's time to say, well, maybe we didn't think that through real well, or, here's the next phase of the concept, or here's now we've got the equipment. Oh, wait, we don't have room for that there. So we got to do something different. And so I think that was a great reminder to just look at the process, that there is still time versus feeling all the pressure that I had to make a decision right now.
And John, I'll be really curious and interested in talking to you in like a 1.5 or 2 years to get your take on how you feel about projects like that. So you mentioned it kind of in reference to what I was saying earlier. A lot of my background was programming or events, and I've grown now, like my favorite aspects or some of my favorite aspects of my job are like the big projects like that. Like I'm renovating 2 rec centers right now, and I have 3 more rec centers in the next 5 years that we're going to renovate. And those are completely different than just planning programs and the staff development and events and everything that I've done that I'm very comfortable in. But I'll be curious, like in your take in a 1.5 years, working on park projects or working on capital projects, like, will you feel that that is your new go-to that you love, or that you still miss the programming side? Because I've seen like a major shift in my thought process on like what I look forward to on a day-to-day basis.
And I'm right there with you, Jay, on that, because it's going to be fascinating. I've kind of described myself, my learning style is you dangle the carrot in front of me, and that's where I'm going to succeed the best. And I think this is another one that I kind of said, yeah, you know what, I've had opportunities in my career to do some projects, and I've kind of looked at my supervisors and said, yeah, you know what, I'm happy to do them, but that's not what I want to be doing. So if there's somebody else who wants it, go ahead, let them do it. And now that it's 100% part of my role because I've chosen to take on these new challenges, it's going to be interesting to see if that carrot becomes truly a carrot when I get there, or if it's, okay, yep, I've done that. What's next? And so I'm right there with you to see where it is. But that, again, going back to the question that Tom asked earlier, I think that's something that really excites me to learn that and say, yep, it is, or nope, it's not. And I think that's a big part of why I accepted this role as well.
I also want to go back to ask you a question on something you said earlier and it's been said a couple times today that, you never desired to be a director. And I asked that, and I want to bring this up because there's so many times that we meet professionals that's their goal. I want to be a park and rec director. I want to be, a director of a big agency. And typically those are coming from folks that are maybe younger or less experienced in the field. That's just, they see this end goal and that's what they want and that's what they strive for. And a lot of times, we may have a conversation with them and they're not ready for it, or they think they're ready, and that we don't maybe think on the outside that they're ready for it. Obviously, we've all known each other for 10, 15 years, maybe more than that. And we've seen you progress from a leadership perspective and what you've been able to accomplish. And like, you obviously have the skills and the tools to be a director, but I'm curious on your take on why you never wanted to do that when I think we could all say collectively that you'd be successful in it if you took that opportunity.
There's two answers for me on that. I mean, the first answer is politics isn't really my thing. I don't like red tape. I'm not a big fan of trying to negotiate things. If I see something that should be done and I believe right, and I think, Jay, this is where you and I, going back to Working Genius, not that this needs to be brought up more unless they want to start paying you guys some money, I'm a discerner as well. And so if I see something, if I believe in something, I want to get it done. If I believe it's right, I want to fight through it and I want to get it done. And so I think that red tape that comes with sitting in a director's chair is something that is always, as I'm saying this out loud, maybe it scared me more than I thought it did. I mean, I think I always said, I just don't want to deal with it. But maybe that was out of fear as I'm making that realization to deal with that side of it was something that I think always slowed me down in wanting it and made me say, I'd just rather not do with it. I'm going to do what I'm comfortable with and kind of trust my instinct and just go with it. The other half, and I think that's what one of the things that really drew me to St. Peter in general is I like to look at myself as a boots on the ground kind of professional. I don't need to sit at that 10,000 foot view and just look and say, hey, I want to see this happen. I want to see that happen. Go make it happen. I want to be there in the trenches with people. I want to be there interacting with the public. I want to know who the players are in our community. And I want to know who the people just walking into the rec center with their family are. And having worked for both large and small agencies across the state of Minnesota, that's something that I found smaller agencies foster better. It's not that it's impossible to do it in a larger organization. I think it's fostered more in a small town or a small organization or a small community because everybody has to. It's just kind of the way those communities work. And so to me, this position and specifically is an opportunity to do a little bit of both. I get the director opportunity. I get the director experience. I get the new challenges that come with it. But at the end of the day, we're a department of 9 or 10 staff in a community of, 12,000 people. So it's, when there's something around, it's all hands on deck. It's people walking through the community center. I'm saying hi to them regardless of, whether they know I'm the director or not. And frankly, it doesn't matter. And I think that's exemplified. Actually, I found out after the fact that the city administrator, when checking my references, was asked a question that the mayor asked him to ask of saying, if John sees a child at a soccer practice who's got an untied shoe, does he stop, point it out, and does he help them? And to me, that's the type of thing I want to do. That's something I want to be involved in. I don't just want to sit in quote unquote the ivory tower and say, go do this and go do that. Listening to the last episode that aired, the director from Houston, listening to the accomplishments he had were amazing. And it was incredible listening to what Joe had to say. But I'm also going, that's not my style of doing things. That organization would have swallowed me whole and I would have been miserable. So I think in this role, I've been able to overcome those two pieces by looking at it through a challenge in the political realm, Jay, but also, nourishing my need to be boots on the ground. I think this specific opportunity gives me the chance to do both. And so I think that's ultimately why I was able to say, yeah, let's give this a shot.
I think that's fascinating. And I think once you're in that director role, first of all, you start to see it a little bit more that it's chess that's being played and not checkers. Like when I was a rec superintendent in Missouri City, I wanted to do a wife carry because it was a traditional European race and I wanted to try it there. But it was everyone above me that was saying, okay, wife, not spouse, spouse, not partner. What does that look like? It's, those types of things, you really do have to start to view a longer game in the director role. And I definitely get that. But also you have to know your leadership capacity and style and what agencies it would work and not work under. I've said before, I watched the McDonald's movie or documentary about how the McDonald's brothers were in some way manipulated in a lot of ways, the way they've shown it, to have lost out on this fortune because Ray Kroc came in and scaled it up incredibly. But I've never watched it and wanted to be Ray Kroc. I've always watched it and said, I could probably identify more with the McDonald's brothers. I would have been fine owning just a couple of restaurants. I don't think I would have wanted to own one in Qatar. You know what I mean? And so knowing that, not that maybe I couldn't try to run that if that was the thing. I just don't want to run it. I don't want to run a facility as big as Houston's agency maybe, and so there are a lot of times where I talk to people and say, Pflugerville's probably as big as I may go, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Which leads me to a question that I think is important for young professionals and professionals alike. And it's something you went through, and that is ambition at some point has the outlet of looking online and seeing all the jobs that are available. And you had to do that recently. And you like Katie Keller and some of our other close friends work from a smaller net. You didn't want to necessarily leave, and you were pretty selective with a couple different areas. So you had to do some research. What's that agency like? We've had other folks like Kara and Ryan Hagerness and others that have maybe done, and Tiffany Johnson, for example, have had a wide open net. Nathan, had been on these, and they've all had these wide open. They've been able to be interested to go anywhere. You just went through a process of preparing yourself, your application, your resume, and getting yourself completely ready for interviewing for a job. What highlights and lowlights would you point out? What things would you make sure you would say is either a cautionary tale or something to think about for others that may be starting to go through that process? They may see a job that's interested in them. It may be a town they could live in or a town they already live in, but what other things should they research? And what other things, how should they prepare to be the applicant that might get interviewed for a job like that?
So Shane, I'm going to answer it, and then I'm going to backtrack, and then I'm going to answer some more on that. First thing is, I'm just going to say, you got to know yourself. As you just alluded to, you've at the end of the day, you've got to know yourself, know what you're truly looking for, or at least have a direction of something that's important to you, whether it is that geographical location, whether it is, population, whether it's certain responsibilities, whatever. You got to know what it is you're looking for. That being said, going backwards, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've applied for superintendent, assistant directors, manager level positions, probably 8 to 10 times in the last 3 to 4 years. And that was the process where I really learned myself. I would say if I go back to the first upper level position that I interviewed for 3 or 4 years ago, I was there to explore more than anything else. I don't know if I believed it was a great fit, but I'm like, I got to go find out. I have to learn that. And so I went through, like I said, 8 to 10 processes before this one. Frankly, all of them I walked out going, yeah, great opportunity. I don't know that it's the best fit for me. Now, fortunately, I didn't have to make the decision because they did. And it wasn't me, which I think is a product. And this is going back to the know yourself. I think it was a product of, because I wasn't all in. They could see that, whether they knew it intentionally or not. I think they could see that I wasn't all in. So if you know yourself, and then coming back to this instance, I had known this job was probably coming. So my predecessor, Joey, was going again back to his hometown of New Ulm. And I think there was a lot of the industry going, yeah, Joey's a very logical fit for that. And I'm in my mind going, well, this is an opportunity then, if he does get it, that I do my research and find out if this might or might not be a fit for me. So I had time to prepare. And so by the time the application even came out, I'd already done my homework, said, yep, this is something that is important to me. I still had a lot to learn and still had a lot of questions, but I was able to go through and look at that from a perspective of, hey, this is something that aligns with a lot of, not everything, because that's the other piece I would give advice. No job is going to check every box. It's not possible. There's always going to be something you're going to look at and go, yeah, no, not so much, but is it worth it? And so this one was one that even before I submitted my application, they went, this checks a lot of boxes. I'm going to go find out if it's the right fit. And I was ready to be myself. And I had conversations, I think, with all three of you at some point prior to that interview of, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be myself. And if I'm their candidate, great. If I'm not their candidate, that's okay too. But I'm going to be 100% me. I'm going to let them know who I am. And I think that was the first of these upper level positions that I had truly been able to say, this is me, take it or leave it. And I'm okay with whatever the answer is. And so I think as people are preparing for that, especially these upper level positions, you've got to stay, and it's already been said today, you got to stay true to yourself. That will influence how you write your cover letter, how you write your resume, how you answer interview questions, how you are perceived. Because again, you can recite your canned answers to questions and you're probably going to do fine. But for me, when I'm hiring, and I feel like St. Peter did, it's that emotion, it's that passion, it's that putting yourself and investing yourself behind it that really separates you from a job. And it doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert or a boisterous person, just knowing that yourself, that you are in what you're saying versus simply just going through the motions shows up every time. And so be true to yourself as you're going through these processes.
John, that's great. And I can't help but First, I want to just say John's one of the most genuine people that I know in this profession. Everybody is, trust me. But for something about John's very calming demeanor and that Minnesotan, is that how you pronounce it? Is it Minnesotan?
Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll
Okay.
go with that.
Personality, John's a great guy, and I enjoy all of our conversations with him. And I can't help but reflect on what you just said, and really a lot of what you said, being true to yourself and this is who I am, accept it. You really apply those to life too, right? With your, your families, buying a house, going into any big decision, right? You may not get everything that was on your list or check every box, right? Or you may not do that for whatever situation you're in. And I think it's just a really good way to really look at things. It humbles you. It puts things into perspective.
Well, John, I got a fun question. We've asked a couple people so far. We haven't asked it lately, but if you could go out to dinner and bring 3 other park and rec professionals, regardless of where they live, whether they're in any area of the country, if you just could pick and have your favorite 4-course dinner with 4 people, who would they be?
It's funny. I've listened to so many of your episodes already. With my commute, I love them, and with my travels in general, I love listening to them because it just gets me excited to do what we do. And of all the episodes I've listened to, when I hear you ask this question, I always go, when I'm on, I really hope they don't ask this question. I have no idea how to answer it.
Here's the thing. It's a tough question because, like, obviously there's been so many people that have had an impact on so many people. But at the same time, like, when we go out to meals or we get together at conference, like, we have typically 4, 5, 6 days to have meals 3 times a day. And we're doing that with so many people. So to pick one, I get it. It's not easy. But we'll put you on the spot and see what you come up with.
Oh, man. I mean, I'm gonna kind of cop out here, Jay, and I mean this with the utmost sincerity, that I love meeting new people and I love picking their brain and going from there. But at the end of the day, while I am more extroverted, I like to say an introverted extrovert. And I think, to me, the most valuable conversations time when I'm at conference or when I'm with other recreation professionals are honestly the conversations with our smaller group of professionals, our family. I mean, I love talking with the 3 of you.
You still have to pick 3. You have to pick 3.
Really?
I mean, here, I'll make it easier. You could eliminate us right now. You've already done it
I wasn't even
with us.
going to say the 3 of you. I was just going to say, can we just get the 10 of us together for 15 of us together from our family?
Can't do it.
Can't do it. It's a 4-top table. All they have.
Well, all right. It's just one that comes to mind off the top of my head because of the story of how she impacted my career without knowing it at all. I would say Cindy White out of Burlington is one that, again, she downplays this, but I first got to know her when she was the head of the externship committee for the academy. And I had applied. It was my first time applying for the externship. I was in my 30s. I only had what I thought was my last year because I was 34 at the time, and I was going to be 35 before the next conference. And I applied, didn't get it. And Cindy I asked for feedback on what I could do better. And she was very blunt, which I appreciated, but said a lot of things that I frankly took a little personally. And it was really hard for me to hear these things. And frankly, I was a little mad, and my parents will attest to hearing me say, like, what in the world is going on here? I don't understand. This is who I am. Why is that a bad thing? And the more I thought about it and the more I reflected on what she said, it was basically the gist was, she said, know your audience, know who you're writing to. And I took that very to heart, and it meant a lot. I actually ended up applying again the next year because I was still 35. I wasn't over 35, so it worked. I asked that question, and I was able to connect with her at that conference and really talk to her what that meant to me to hear about it. And especially a year later, having kind of worked through any emotion behind the actual feedback. And so to sit down, I don't get to see Cindy. Either she hasn't made some conferences or I've missed some, or frankly, we've both been busy, but we still connect via email and snail mail and some text from time to time. And so I think to have her at the table would be one that I would relish that opportunity to do again. God, I've got 2 more, huh? I would bring, even though he's still a close friend and mentor of mine, I relish my conversations with him. Nate Rosa here in Minnesota is a tremendous friend, mentor of mine. And long story, he actually beat me out for a job and I came back and worked for him. But and then he left a year and a half later and I got the job that I wanted a year and a half before that and got to be a ski instructor in Colorado for another year as a result of that. But Nate and I are, again, he lives a few miles from me. We're still great friends. We probably talk weekly. I'm in a fantasy football league with him, but I always relish the conversations he and I have and how we push each other to be better at everything that we do, whether it's personal or whether it's in our professional lives, because he's currently with the city of Apple Valley here in Minnesota in a new promotional role for him too. So especially as we've kind of going through similar transitions in our career, I love our conversations. And now that we're at the same point or similar points, I think I've got to give a shout out to him. So I'd certainly guess I'd add him to that list. And, to quote Chris Nunes, and I'm also stalling a little bit here, I think it's always important to have a mentor under the age of 30. So if I were to look at that phrase, looking at the two people that I've got at the table with me already, I'd say I need to pick somebody under the age of 30 to sit at that table with me. And I think off the top of my head, I would pick a former guest of yours and somebody that, Jay, I'm grateful that you introduced me to, would be Maria Cepeda. Just how much we have pushed each other in the mentorship since, Jay, you connected us in 2020. And frankly, since I've only actually gotten to meet Maria face to face one time in the last 3.5 years that we've known each other, and that was at last year's conference, I would say I would invite Maria as the third person because I respect what she's done throughout her career. I respect the mentorship process that we've had. I truly respect having a mentor under the age of 30 and the fact that we don't get to see each other that often. I would say I would bring her to the table to round out my four. And I know there's another 150 people that I'm leaving off this list, including the 10 to 15 that I wanted to start with of just our NRPA family. So there you go.
That's a hell.
It's a good trio.
That's a hell of a table for sure. Absolutely.
And it's quite crazy to think you've only met Maria in person once because she talks about you all the time. I know how close you guys have gotten. I know how much you've helped her, and I know she's given you some great discussions here and there. So that's what's pretty powerful about our profession is like you don't necessarily have to know someone for a very long time or know them on a face-to-face basis to impact them, and that's proof right there.
Yep, and again, I'm really thankful you introduced us, and I remember vividly the phone call with you was saying, "Hey, I've got a great young professional. Would you be interested in chatting with her?" And again, that was in the heart of COVID, and again, we've kept in touch and talk all the time, and seen her do tremendous things throughout her young career, and will continue to do tremendous things, as was very evident by the episode. So
definitely
awesome, man. Hey, thanks for being number 19 for us.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great to see you guys, and hopefully I can see you guys in person here soon. So since I missed you at conference this year.
Yeah, man, we missed you, and we're going to say some nice things about you, so you got to go ahead and hang up now.
Yeah, and I could I cross you off my list, John.
Yep. All right, Tom. Thanks, guys.
All right,
see
buddy.
You later.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Hey, John.
Have a good
Great
weekend.
seeing you.
Real fun conversation. Like that, I don't know. I know I said it before, but John's a great guy.
Yeah, you could talk to him for hours. A very genuine person, and he's a humble dude. I mean, he's got a lot of experience, and he could lead a big agency, but he just doesn't want to. He enjoys his baseball, he enjoys his ski trips and his hunting trips and his time with his family, and he enjoys the lifestyle he leads. And he was looking for a fit, and I think St. Peter's is that fit for him. I think we're all rooting for him, and we hope it goes really well.
Yeah, I think one thing that's super special about John too is like you just said, like he knows what he wants and he knows what he's comfortable in. And, he had opportunities that he interviewed for, and he could tell that, hey, it's not the right fit for me. And regardless of whether they would have chose him or not, it's like you didn't maybe go all in because you could tell something wasn't right for him. And, not everyone knows that. And not everyone would just accept that. Some people would take it on and be like, well, I'm going to make it work because I want another opportunity. I want a new job. And he didn't. And he's smart in doing that, I think.
Honestly, sometimes you gotta really throw your hat in a bunch of different rings, right? And It's hard depending on where you are, but that's a great lesson that John can teach us all. He threw his hat in a lot of rings. Sometimes situations where he knew right away it wasn't for him, and sometimes where, you know, maybe there wasn't a fit organizationally, but ultimately you're gonna find where you're meant to be and where you should be and take your next step. And so John took his time, and he said it in one of his answers too, right? Like when it comes to evaluating the process, and he's very good at that.
I think it's a reminder that there's rarely, I've never heard of a department with 2 directors, right? You may have 2 assistant directors or 2 or 3 superintendents or 3 or 4 supervisors, but that's why it gets so difficult at the top, because there's 1 director for each agency when there might be 5 supervisors for that agency. And so I think it also shows that when you're looking for what you want to do, you need to apply 4 or 5 different times to be ready for that role when it's available. So that was really cool. Awesome, fellas.
Great time, guys. See ya.
All right, see ya.
Thanks, Shane. Bye, everyone.